Welcome to T.R.E.E., Trauma-Informed Parenting with Dr. Hasshan. The T.R.E.E. podcast presents resources, skills, and healthy parenting approaches rooted in self-care, self-compassion, and self-love, because we recognize that healthy roots produce healthy fruits. Today we're going to talk about emotional intelligence. How does trauma play into emotional intelligence? Trauma refers to an event, series of events, or set of circumstances that is experienced by an individual as a physically or emotionally harmful, life-threatening, overwhelms our ability to cope, and has lasting adverse effects on our mental, physical, social, emotional, or spiritual well-being. So the question again is, how does trauma impact thinking, brain development, and social interactions, and our emotional connections? Toxic stress increases the likelihood of brain health problems. Most experience ongoing difficulties with emotional regulation, adaptability, social skills, and social concepts. I was left back in kindergarten, and my friend was telling me it wasn't the thinking and the academics, it was the behaviors. The behaviors came from surviving trauma and not being able to regulate my emotions. So we want to think about that as we see these behaviors in our children. Trauma affects emotional intelligence and has a profound and lasting impact. Trauma impacts our self-awareness because under repeated extreme stress, we tend to shut down our senses and take in as little information as possible. We just explode, especially in children. So since trauma affects our self-awareness, it also affects our social awareness, and this limits our ability to access our emotional intelligence capabilities. 4 things to do to heal from trauma utilizing emotional intelligence. Take time each morning to breathe and check in with yourself. Now, these 4 things are things I want you as a parent to do, but also we can begin to help our children develop these healthy habits. So the first one is to take time each morning to breathe and to check in with yourself. Self-reflection. The second one, observe what helps you shift your emotion and energy states. Self-awareness. The third, practice listening to others and guessing what they are feeling. Then check in with them to see how accurate you are. You seem frustrated. It sounds like you're sad. You look disappointed. And listen for feedback. So let's teach our children to learn empathy by being aware of other people's emotions and feelings. And let's model that. The fourth one is explore your values and purpose. What inspires you? Write these things down and keep them where you can see them so that you're supported in your work of healing. We want to always remember what our passions are, what our values are, and most importantly, what is our why. And we want our children to make decisions from those core beliefs that they hold. What are their whys? We all know what IQ is. IQ is derived from a standardized test. On a normal IQ test, scores are calculated by dividing the individual's mental age by his or her chronological age and then multiplying that number by 100. So a child with a mental age of 15 and a chronological age of 10 would have an IQ of 150. Today, scores on most IQ tests are calculated by comparing the test taker's score to the top scores of people in the same age range. IQ represents abilities such as visual and spatial processing, knowledge of the world, fluid reasoning, working memory and short-term memory, and quantitative reasoning. So what is EQ? On the other hand, EQ is a measure of a person's level of emotional intelligence. This refers to a person's ability to understand, use, and manage their own emotions in positive ways to relieve stress, communicate effectively, empathize with others, and overcome challenges and diffuse conflict. EQ is centered on abilities such as identifying emotions, evaluating how others feel, controlling one's own emotions, perceiving how others feel, using emotions to facilitate social communication, and relating to others. Research has shown that EQ is more important than IQ in predicting our children's success. People with high emotional intelligence are usually very self-aware. They understand their emotions, and because of this, they don't let their emotions dominate. We're not saying that our children will get it perfect all the time, but we want them to be aware and able to articulate how they're feeling, what their triggers are, and what their behavior and decisions are doing to those around them. They're confident when they understand self-awareness because they trust their intuition and they don't let their emotions get out of control. They're also willing to take an honest look at themselves. They know their strengths and weaknesses, and they work on these areas so that they can perform better. Many people believe that this self-awareness is the most important part of emotional intelligence. Self-regulation is the ability to control emotions and impulses. People who self-regulate typically don't allow themselves to become too angry or jealous, and they don't make impulsive, careless decisions. They think before they act. Characteristics of self-regulation are thoughtfulness, comfortable with change, integrity, and the ability to say no. The third component is motivation. People with a high degree of emotional intelligence are usually motivated. They're willing to defer immediate results for long-term success. They're highly productive, love a challenge, and are very effective in whatever they do. The fourth component is empathy. This is perhaps the second most important element of emotional intelligence. Empathy is the ability to identify with and understand the wants, needs, and viewpoints of those around you. People with empathy are good at recognizing the feelings of others, even when those feelings may not be obvious. As a result, empathetic people are usually excellent at managing relationships, listening and relating to others. They avoid stereotyping and judging too quickly, and they live their lives in a very open and honest way.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, you can climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no. You want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
It's usually easy to talk to and like people with good social skills, another sign of high emotional intelligence. Those with strong social skills are typically team players. Rather than focusing on their own success first, they help others develop and shine. They can manage disputes, are excellent communicators, and are masters at building and maintaining relationships. So really think about that. What do you think your child's EQ is? How would you rate your own? And what are some areas in which you can grow, model, and support your child or children in developing? Creating effective relationships employ all of your emotional competencies, awareness, regulation, motivation, and empathy to influence and persuade others, build consensus and support for team goals, motivate and inspire yourself and others to achieve those goals. Okay, so now we want to talk about how to improve your emotional intelligence and the emotional intelligence of your children. The good news is that emotional intelligence can be learned and developed as well as working on your skills and using these strategies. Practice observing how you feel. Pay attention to how you behave. Take responsibility for your feelings and behaviors. Practice responding instead of reacting, which is emotions-based. Practice empathizing with yourself and others. Create a positive environment, and remember, emotional intelligence is a lifetime process. The benefits specifically for children of high emotional intelligence is high EQ is linked to high IQ. Children with higher levels of emotional intelligence perform better in school, and they tend to have more friends and better grades, right? Because it's connected to better relationships. Emotional intelligence skills help children manage conflict and develop deeper friendships. Childhood EQ is linked to higher success in adulthood, and higher emotional intelligence improves mental health. Individuals with higher levels of emotional intelligence are less likely to experience depression and other mental health illnesses. Good news! All kids have the capacity to learn emotional intelligence. You can teach me how. Label your child's emotions. Show empathy yourself. Model appropriate ways to express feelings. Teach healthy coping skills. Develop problem-solving skills, and make emotional intelligence an ongoing goal for yourself, your child, and your family. Thank you.